Okay, I just heard it. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the board, I wanted to welcome you to tonight's town hall. I also want to take the opportunity to thank you. Thank you for the time to join us tonight. Thank you for your understanding as we go through this process, and to thank you for your participation. Those of you who have joined different work groups, we thank you for doing that. I want to talk a little bit about the process that we've all been going through. You know, as you can imagine, there's as many different opinions as there are students in our district. And because of that, it's not going to be possible that every single person will be happy with every decision we make. And we hope that you will be understanding that what we're trying to do is the very best possible scenarios that we can do within the rules that are being set by us. We don't set our own rules, unfortunately. Our rules are set by Albany, whether it be the education department, the board of regents, or the governor's office, which has the final say. That's whose rules we have to follow. Tonight, you're going to hear the results of the most recent surveys, and I think it's going to become clear to you why I say not everyone will be happy with every single decision, but we sure are going to try to make this as comfortable for everyone as possible. Why did we wait till tonight to do this? I know many of you have sent emails to me and asked me why has this school or that school already done this? I can just tell you that it was our conscious decision to wait until we had some guidelines that we could provide a framework for the way that we're looking at returning to school. It's not to say that our administration, our faculty, our school personnel have not been meeting and working. I know that I call the school basically every day, and I can tell you that the superintendent is in meetings, the assistant superintendent's in meetings, and just about everyone in the school is working on trying to figure out the best possible way we can re-enter the school year. We realize that this has not been an easy journey for any of you. I don't take it lightly. I know that we at Scotia like to be ahead and be first in everything we do. And I believe we will be. I think we set that example during graduation when others had made plans to do this and that. And then when the final guidance came out, we were in the right position to make sure we can make our graduation feel as comfortable as possible for those students that were graduating, and make it as close to what they were hoping they would do if the COVID crisis was not here. So on behalf of the board, I want to thank the superintendent, her staff, and all the staff in the school for everything they've done. I think we've shown this year that we have the heart in this school district to do what needs to be done to ensure the very best for our students. Tonight, we're going to hear from the superintendent, who is going to share a number of different items with you. And after that, we're going to have a question and answer period. I can't promise you that every single question is going to get answered tonight. There'll be some questions that we may have to take back and get back to you. Those questions which we can't get to tonight, I promise you in some way, shape, or manner, you will have an answer to the point you were trying to make. I believe that Mr. Hanlon is going to be the one that's organizing that, and I'm sure he's going to try to get through as many as possible. And with that, I again want to thank you. I want to thank the board members that are also in attendance today, and I want to turn this over to Superintendent Schwartz and thank her for everything she's been doing.
What we're talking about tonight is our overarching plan for reopening as we know it today. But I want to make it very clear that we don't think for a minute this is the final plan. It is our best thinking at this point. The governor will speak this week and make a decision about whether or not schools reopen or how they might reopen. So It could be as early as this week that we will need to make some tweaks or adjustments to our plan. In addition, as Dave mentioned, our work groups, our advisory teams will start meeting this coming week. Folks will be getting information about that. And once those groups start working on protocols and procedures, we will be releasing that work as it's done on our website so that you can see, for example, how we plan to do breaks for students wearing masks. So there is still much work to be done. And again, the plan is going to need to be fluid, as Karen would say, slim and nimble, so that we can move quickly to make the changes and adjustments that the future might hold for us. So I'd like to start with the survey data. I'm not going to read it to you, and I am going to share some remarks about the survey that was conducted, but the survey and all of the hundreds of comments we've gotten will be posted to the website. So you can go in, take a look at it, read all of the comments. And as Dave said, you will see that people are in a number of different thinking spaces about what should happen. So Karen, can you put our first slide up?
Sure.
Thank you. Folks, I know this is a challenge to read. This is one of the problems of virtual. But again, you will be able to see this on our website, so you can look at it more closely, and we'll speak about it tonight. As I mentioned, we conducted 2 surveys. One was a community survey, one was a staff survey. We had 1,667 people respond to our community survey, and 338 staff members respond to the staff survey, which, given our enrollment of about 2,600, is a nice showing, but again, doesn't reflect every individual in our school district. You will see tonight that many results across staff in our community are quite similar, although there is certainly variability within each group. So I will tell you, we have everything from folks who have said, if you make my child wear a mask, they're not returning, to folks who say, if everyone isn't masked, my child's not coming back. So both ends of that spectrum. And again, we will post all of this data for you to take a look at. So this first question compared what parents were thinking to what staff were thinking in terms of students wearing masks, staff wearing masks, reducing class sizes, everyone entering the building having had a health check, and the school make available masks to anyone who comes in the building. And then asked if there were people who had no or few safety concerns. And I'm happy to say that based on the surveys from both groups, both masks and social distancing are seen as important by members of our community and by our staff. Karen, we could go to the next slide. In terms of the parent survey, parents are willing to return their children to us, their most precious commodity, if we are following the CDC guidelines and if we are, in fact, being as cautious and as careful as we can be. Although even at that, that's about 75% of our parents, there are many parents who have reservations. We are going to have a virtual option. In fact, we will have a hybrid model, which I'll talk a bit more about in just a bit. But we will also have a virtual option for parents who choose not to send their children back, either because their child perhaps has a health need or because someone in the home does, and they're worried that the child could bring something home. So as we talk about planning, we're looking at students returning, we're looking at a hybrid, and we're looking at, which I hope doesn't happen to us this year, if in fact we all have to be out again. Karen, our next slide. So this chart talks a little bit about what parents would like to see different if in fact we go to online learning again. And I want to say that we certainly understand as members of the educational community that although we did our very best last spring, for some students it wasn't enough, for some students it was too much, and for some students it might have been just right. However, the State Education Department has released 146 pages of guidance, and it's very clear that what we offered last spring will not be acceptable if in fact we go to online learning again. We will need to take attendance, there will have to be grades, we must cover content, there must be 180 days of substantive instruction. So parents say they'd like to see it look different if we do that, and I'm saying to you, if we do that, it has to look different. We understand that too. Our next slide, Karen. One of the challenges, as you might guess, will be transporting students to school. We asked parents if they were willing to put their child on a bus, under what circumstances, socially distanced, masked, if they would perhaps prefer to drive their own child to school. And of course, we have a number of students who walk to school here. Masks will be worn on our buses, and we will practice social distancing. So buses will not run at full capacity, which might mean an adjustment in the times of school starting and ending. And again, we'll talk a bit more about that. We are also going to provide meals for families as we did last year. That's part of the governor's guidance. And although at this point we don't have a large demand for that, I can share with you that last year or last spring, between March 18th and the close of the school year, we served over 25,000 meals and provided over 100 students and their families with food every Friday to get through the weekend. So I also recognize that in our community, that need comes and goes, changes sometimes based on what's going on at home. And I want to assure folks that we will be here to help you with that again. Karen, our next slide. This asks you to comment on whether you would be concerned if there's a member in your household with underlying health concerns, and what you would think about sending your child back. So we know that one of the concerns is that the coronavirus can be asymptotic in people, so you might not have any symptoms. You could pass it to someone who's at school. They could then bring it home to someone at home. So we are, again, being very aware and planning for that in terms of our cleaning, our busing, our spacing in the school buildings, everything I think that you could conceivably imagine. We are trying to get our arms around so that we can assure that to the best of our abilities, we are offering a healthy environment when our students return. We can go to the next slide, Karen. Thank you. We asked our staff about virtual teaching. And I have to say, one of the conversations I've had with many folks was, if we had planned to do virtual teaching, if we had been making that as a plan over time, it would have taken us months to do the planning, then to plan for the professional development, then to make sure teachers had the professional development, then to make sure all the equipment was in the right place, that people were prepared to do what we were asking them to do. One of the things that I think has amazed all of us is that within 2 weeks we were online. And again, we did a very good job. I commend my teachers and my staff, wonderful people who worked so very, very hard to rapidly come up to speed. And I want to commend them publicly this evening for that, because I know for all of us it was a bit of a step up. But sometimes when you are forced to do something quickly, you adapt much more quickly. You're much more nimble. Our staff would prefer a hybrid model, about 46% of them. Like the online learning, about 30% wanted to go to full-time remote, and about 23% wanted to go to have us all return to school. And I think it's safe to say that part of that is just the unknown. People are not sure. We're certainly looking across the United States as cases of COVID continue to rise. I think folks are very concerned. New York seems to be in a good spot. That if we truly aren't as prepared as we could be for our students' return and for our return, that we could be in trouble. So again, I want to reassure you tonight that we have been planning and working, not just this summer, but for months to get ready for whatever the fall might bring. I was also interested in seeing if people thought certain grade levels should return prior to other grade levels, and not surprisingly, the younger the student, the more people thought those students should be back in school. And Karen, our last slide from staff. One of the things that we have been discussing and is certainly part of our planning is to minimize students and teachers from being in multiple spots during the day. We have a plan that will make that a little more doable at elementary, actually much more doable. But at the middle school and high school, that's a much harder proposition given that children switch classes basically 9 times a day. So we are looking in that planning that we'll talk to you about this evening to make sure that we minimize that content. You will hear people talk about pods of students with a specific teacher, teachers moving rather than students, those kinds of strategies, and we will embrace some of that. So that's an overview of our data. Again, it was quick. That's not my main thrust this evening, but it gives you a sense of what people have been thinking about and how they responded to us. And again, you will have all of that data to review from our website and all of the comments, which I hope you read. They are very interesting comments. So I want to talk a bit about what we're planning, which I know is what people want to hear. And I want you to frame it up this way. There are 3 levers that will exert pressure on us as we reopen. One of them is staffing, one of them is our school's capacities, and the other one is transportation. So as we make decisions, we have to bear those things in mind. We have 3 things that I can say will be universal. So regardless of what grade your child is in or which school they attend, no matter which school you teach in or where you work in the district. And those 3 universals will be a morning health check utilizing a daily health app that we have purchased through Cap Region BOCES that other districts are using. It's device agnostic, so you could use it on your iPhone, on your Android, on a tablet, on a Chromebook, on your home computer. And it will allow you to let us know in the morning that you have checked your health and are prepared to come into school, either as a teacher or a staff member or a student, or that you shouldn't be at school. I need parents and community members to partner with us in doing this. Given what we are trying to accomplish as we return students to school, I don't want to hold up our instruction while we are taking everyone's temperature and checking their health. While I will be blunt, I can require and am requiring staff to do a health check. I really need you as parents to work with us and do that health check at home for your child, so that as they arrive at school, they're healthy, they're ready to go to work, we're ready to receive them, and the day can move forward. So that's a universal. All students and all staff members are going to wear masks. You can send the mask, so much as you can have your own mask when you're out in public that you have supplied. You can send mask with your children. Certainly staff, you bring your own mask. But I will tell you that we will provide masks to folks who show up and don't have them. But I'd also say this, for those of you who were distressed about the mask part, and you'll see that in the survey, we're thinking as a district about everyone's well-being. And the thing I believe most certainly at this point in time is one of the things we can do to promote well-being in our schools is to make sure everyone who's here is wearing a mask. So we will do that. If wearing a mask is something that worries you, certainly put it into the Q&A, and you and I, can have a discussion about it. But at this point today, given what I know, everybody will be wearing masks. And in addition, we are going to do social distancing. Now, some people believe that if you're in a mask, you don't need to social distance, or you could social distance less. And I would share with you that having taught everything from preschool through high school, it's a stretch to think that little people in particular will stay away from one another, will understand the concept of being away from one another because they're children and they want to play and they want to hug their friends and they want to touch each other and share toys and all of those things that children do. So since I can't guarantee a 6-foot distance at every moment, we will use masks and social distancing here at Scotia. So let's talk a little bit about what the return to school will look like in broad terms. So at elementary, our plan is to have all students in every day, so Monday through Friday. It will be a somewhat shorter day for our students, about 45 minutes shorter. And we believe at this point we will have to have a staggered start. So the village schools will start at one time, and Glendale and Glenwarden will start about an hour later. And that will allow us to transport students safely and practicing social distancing on the buses. And we are planning for all students at this point, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Students will be in socially distanced groups and masked with mask breaks. They will be with their teacher for half of the day. Then they will be with another supervising adult. So if I'm a teacher with a class of 20 students, I would be with 10 of those students in the morning, while the other 10 are with a supervising adult. And then in the afternoon, I would be with the 10 students I hadn't seen yet. And the students I had already seen would be with the supervising adult. And what do I mean by that? During that time when they are not with their classroom teacher, students will have work to do. They will have a special, either art, music, physical education, or library. They will have, we're trying to build in at least a 20-minute recess, depending on whether we could actually get children outdoors, spread out enough. They will have their lunch. So both segments of their day are about 2.5 hours. Karen and her team are talking more about power standards and what exactly we are going to teach during those 2.5 hours. Certainly, it will not be the same broad curricula that we presently can teach when we're in school all day, but we will look at making sure all students have the skills and abilities that they need to continue learning. The specials that I spoke of will run on a 4-day rotation, so students will have a special every day. Sometimes those will be in-person specials, sometimes those will be virtual specials, but there will be something special in each day. At least as we start school, the elementary students will eat in their classrooms. We will most likely have food delivered to them. They will eat in their classrooms and then continue with their day. By shortening the day by about 45 minutes for students, we can ensure that teachers have the planning time that they need at the end or the beginning of each day, and that they also have a lunch period. So we're trying to make sure people do get some time, both children and teachers, that looks more like regular school. And in terms of our students with special needs, the children with the most intense disabilities will be attending school every day. So that's an overview of elementary. Secondary 6-12 is going to look a bit different. In grades 6 through 12, again, starting with the premise that everyone's coming back, students will be divided into thirds, groups A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3. And those groups will be about the same size in terms of a number of students, so that we can ensure that at any given day, there is not more than a third of the student population in either the middle school or the high school. That's what it will take for us to be able to socially distance those children and deliver their instruction. Right now, our plan calls for 2 days of in-person instruction and 4 days of virtual instruction on a rotating schedule. So if you're group A, you're in for 2 days, then out for 4. If you're group B, you're in for 2 days, out for 4. And if you're group C, you're in for 2 days and out for 4. But it will mean that those days change each week. So that will be a bit of a challenge. If this is truly where we land, we will provide schedules for students that make it very clear which days they're in session in person and which days they are virtual. Teachers will teach their regular schedule. So by that, I mean teachers will not be getting additional children. They would be getting one class. So if I'm taking Social Studies 7, or if I'm the teacher of Social Studies 7, what would happen is I would see my one class, but in 3 different groups. And as complex as that sounds, I know that my staff is capable of doing that because of what they were able to do last spring. We're separating students again into smaller groups, socially distanced. So we'll be using the cafeteria sometimes for part of our instruction. That means that students at the middle school are going to eat in the large gym. The lunches are bigger. The groups for lunches are bigger. So we've got to have a bit more space to spread people out. And then in grades 9 through 12, we believe we can achieve spreading the students out across more lunch periods, but having them eat in the cafeteria. Some of our programs for students with special needs will meet daily based on the intense needs of those children. And some of our other programs will also run on a different schedule. So we're working through those specific items. In all instances, our students who are English as a new language learners, which is a small group in our district, but we are aware and want to take good care of them, they will follow the same types of schedules as our other students are following. So they will be 5 days a week in elementary and 2 days on, 4 days virtual at high school. Again, now I want to say this to you. This is planning for everybody to return. I know that about somewhere between 16 and 20% of our parents said on our survey that actually they don't think they can return their children, that they hope for a virtual option. Once we know what those numbers look like, and I'll talk a bit about how we're going to ask for your help to determine that, it could be that we can adjust the schedule at secondary to make for more in-person time. So we want to leave that door open. if I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, it's because I want to be very, very clear with you. What I'm putting out to you tonight is our best thinking today, and again, assumes everyone is coming back. Once we have the real picture, if you will, of who will come and who will not, we can make some adjustments and tweaks. I think that I can speak for my team when we say we all hope to get our secondary students in for more in-person instruction. So let's talk a bit about technology and devices.
Hey, Susan.
Oh, sure, Bob.
Can we stop and can I pass some of these questions on to you since we're getting dozens of them?
Of course you may. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So one of the questions here was, what's going to happen to a child who refuses to wear a mask?
We will give them a mask on the day that they either don't have one or are refusing to wear one.
Okay.
Honestly, at this point, we need students in masks. So if students aren't going to wear a mask, they're most likely going to need to go the virtual route for instruction.
Okay. Now, one of the other questions here was asking as a family who's looking for full-time remote learning for our children, will that option be available for all grade levels?
Yes, we are working on that both within our own district and also regionally. There are certain things at secondary that, for example, if I have one teacher who can teach, I'll just pick this randomly, German, and something were to happen and that person could not come back and teach for us or was not able to teach virtually, I would be looking for someone else in the capital region to provide that virtual experience for students. It's somewhat easier at elementary and of course very dependent on how you are certified.
Okay, and then one person asks here, what if they explain what the process is to basically switch between going from virtual to school and school to virtual?
Yes, I'm going to talk about that.
You are? Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let me see. I've got a couple more.
Thank you for jumping in because I forgot to ask.
That's okay. That's okay. Some people ask about the Y Care at the schools. Will that still be held?
Not at our schools. We are working with the Y to figure out what we could do about before and after school. As we start the school year, my goal is going to be to bring in our students and our staff, have them teach, and then shut down the buildings so that we can disinfect at night, thoroughly clean, lock the buildings down, and be ready again to start in the morning. So initially, we will not do before or after school care or continuing ed. Now, again, if things change and continue to go in the right direction, and we have so few cases in New York, I could foresee us lifting some of those restrictions. But at this point, I need to know that I can get my custodial staff into the buildings and get the buildings thoroughly cleaned before children return in the morning.
Okay. And then this has been asked several times. How do you ensure that all parents will tell the truth on health checks? People need to work and they will send their kids to school sick, or high school students will fill out their own checks?
I won't know if people are lying to me or misleading.
Yeah.
So I'm asking parents to partner with us to help you keep children safe. If a parent were to mislead us and the child came in sick, we still have nurses in our buildings. So we will have someone who could check that child out and determine if that child needed to go home. But again, my real hope is that we can be partners in this and that parents can, as challenging as this is, help us embrace that mission to keep everyone as safe as we possibly can. But I'll be very honest, no, I won't know if you've misled me.
Okay. Will Chromebooks be available again for those in need?
Yes, I'm going to talk about informational technology next.
Oh, that's coming too. Okay, all right. Let me let you go. Then we can cover more of these in a little bit.
All right, and just jump in again, Bob. I'm good with that.
All right, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of Chromebooks, last spring, we loaned Chromebooks to both students and staff, and we will be prepared to do that again. However, we're also going to open the district up a bit, and for students who have personal devices, we will let them bring their own device. So BYOD, bring your own device to school. If you are at school on your own device, it will be on what's called our guest network. And we are in the process of upgrading our guest network so it is filtered in exactly the same way that our current student network and staff network is filtered. So it will be SIPA compliant, what's called SIPA compliant. But students can bring their own devices. And yes, we will provide to students who don't have them. In grades 6 through 12, we're also going to create emails for students that will work within our system. So SGCSD emails so that teachers and students can communicate in email, via email. That was something we found last spring would have been incredibly helpful. And we are hustling now to get us to that position where students can do that and do that with their teachers. But it will be locked in within the SGCSD system. As far as the loaning devices, we will be asking again who needs devices, who needs hotspots, and we will be providing them to families. I want to talk a bit about cleaning and air quality because I know folks are concerned around all of those things, and rightfully so. This afternoon, I sent a letter out to staff asking them to please arrange a visit to their classroom so that they can remove all of the soft personal objects that are there. And by that, I mean things like beanbag chairs, stuffed animals, dolls, masks, sometimes blankets or pillows with our younger students. The rooms are going to look pretty stripped down and bare. And of course, with far fewer desks and far fewer items in them. That will help us with the cleaning. We have purchased and are beginning to receive additional spray cleaners with a special mixture that our custodians will be able to use to spray down classrooms, and then you close the door and let them sit for a few minutes, and then you go back in and wipe them down. That's the kind of deep cleaning I want us to be able to do, at least initially, as students return. And again, if things keep improving and we can let up a little bit and start letting folks use our buildings again, we will do that. But at least initially, I want to make sure that we are being as clean as we possibly can. Mr. Giaquinto has already had all of his buildings and ground staff trained once in COVID cleaning by Needham Risk Management. And then we also have a health and safety officer through Cap Region BOCES who's helping us with additional training and risk management types of work. We are going to upgrade the filters on our heating systems. While they will not trap COVID per se, they will trap more particles than our current filters. And we're also going to, at night, purge the building air by raising the intake on our units so that they bring in more fresh air during the night into our buildings. So staff is probably wincing at that because yes, it could be a little cooler again in the morning. Absolutely, but again, I want to make sure we are keeping the buildings as clean as possible. So as we start, once again, there'll be no evening or after school in-person activities in buildings so that we can thoroughly clean and lock down the buildings until morning each school night. And then we will see what we can do beyond that. In addition to cleaning classrooms, of course, we are looking at cleaning our buses and upping our game there as well. The sprayers can also be used on our buses. And if we go to multiple runs, for example, 2 different elementary start times runs, we will be cleaning buses in between those runs. So we do want you to know we are committed to being as clean as possible. In addition, all students will get lessons, as will staff, about proper mask wearing, proper hand washing, not sharing objects, keeping appropriate social distance, and all of those things that you see as you are out in the community. The group that is working on health and safety will also be developing protocols for that. We're also going to limit the number of people into our schools during the day. So sadly, I know some of you, for example, would come in and have lunch with your elementary student. As we start the school year, that's not going to be able to happen. We're really trying to limit the number of people into the schools. We're going to ask you to call and make an appointment in advance. We will expect that you will wear a mask. We will expect you to fill out the paper version of the health screening. So again, I really need your cooperation, my community members, my parents of our children, staff, that we are being as careful as possible as we initially return. I keep saying, this isn't forever. This is what we need to do right now. But I want to be able to go home at night, put my head on my pillow and say, we are doing everything we can to keep our staff and students as safe as possible. Do you have questions, Bob?
Yes. Okay, so several people are asking Susan about how music, choral ears, physical education, how are those things going to look under this scenario?
We can take students outside for physical education classes. They have to be at least 12 feet apart if they are engaging in physical activity that's causing them to breathe heavily, because as folks are aware, it is the when you breathe out that is concerning to people in terms of COVID. Some classes may be doing gentle stretching exercises right in the classroom. I would see that more at elementary. Some of them may be studying other kinds of things, watching a video, talking to their teacher about their phys ed teacher about things that they can do at home, walking programs, those kinds of things. But we do think it's important to keep our children physically active to the extent that we are able, and certainly that we continue to stress physical education as a lifelong skill. Choral ears, same type of thing. Students will have to be further apart to sing together, but we are holding choral ears tryouts as we would typically do. And when I say typically do, I mean because we would typically do them now. We're not doing them the way we typically do them. But we want our students to be able to experience as much of those normal activities as we can. Clearly, if we're talking about concerts, if we're talking about band, those things will take some additional planning if we can offer them. We will be, of course, in pretty good shape as long as the weather stays good and we can get people outside. It will be a bit more restrictive if we go into the winter and we are still as locked down as we will be when we start.
And then how about sports, Susan?
Right now, Section 2 and the New York State Athletic Association has pushed out the start of the sporting season to September 10th, with, I believe, the first dates for competitions September 21st. However, they are watching very closely, and my understanding is, although I have not read it yet, students who are not in attendance at school will not be able to play sports. So for example, if you didn't want your child attending classes, so you weren't going to be part of the in-person and virtual 612, those students would not be eligible to play sports. But I'm waiting to see that in writing. That was what I heard today, but I am a person who needs to see it in writing to know that's a fact. I think NISBA continues to evaluate what makes sense and whether or not some sports that are require less physical contact could be offered maybe at different times in the year. But at this point, all we know is September 10th would be the start of the season. The seasons would be reduced and first competitions would be after the 21st.
Okay, so several people have asked, Susan, what happens if there is a COVID-19 case? Like say a third grade class, a kid in a third grade class, or a teacher or a staff member comes down with COVID. How are we going to be dealing with that?
We are working very closely with the Schenectady County Health Department, as are all the schools in our county, and they, of course, with New York State DOH. The current protocol is if we become aware of a student or staff member who has been infected or is suspected to be have COVID, we call the health department. The health department will then help us in our response to whatever has occurred. In my call on Monday with them, with the health department, they were not willing to say it was an automatic closure or that it wasn't an automatic closure because they see each scenario could possibly happen as having different potential outcomes. So we would follow their guidance, DOH's guidance, and work very closely with the Schenectady County Department of Health, and of course also with our school physicians in terms of what we need to do next or whether a particular school would have to close. Who else? Part of all of this work we are doing to make sure that people are healthy when they come in is for the purpose of contact tracing. Although the school district won't do the contact tracing, we would need to be able to provide the DOH with the contact tracing information that they need.
Okay. If a student does virtual only option for the fall and things get more normal, can they return to school in the springtime?
We're going to talk about that coming up.
Okay, that's good for now, Susan.
Okay, great. So we've talked a little bit about busing. I just want to say we are planning for 50% or less capacity on the buses with masks. There are all kinds of interesting nuances that are being tossed about. So if you are hearing, for example, children from the same family could sit together in a seat, that is accurate. But sometimes if you have an elementary, a middle, and a high school student, all of those people are not on the same bus. So as we look at how we're configuring our runs for the year and what that's going to take, we are just simply starting from the standpoint that, for example, a 66 passenger bus would have somewhere around 30 or less children on it. And those children would be one per seat and somewhat staggered. So what the first child might be sitting next to the window, the second child might be sitting on the aisle. For those of you who've been on buses recently, you know the seats are pretty high. So folks are also thinking that for our shorter and younger students, that compartment is actually a bit of a safety valve itself. And then of course we will want students masked. And we will have bus cleaning protocols beyond what we presently do in place. And of course, transportation staff, as will every other staff member in the district, will be trained in proper mask wearing, cleaning, and all of those types of things. Buses, though, our bus drivers will not be taking temperatures. So again, I need parents to be the folks who do that for us. And if you're thinking, well, why can't you just let them get on the bus and then have the nurse take their temperature? Well, because by then, if in fact someone is sick, they have already exposed every child on that bus and that driver. So that's why I need parents to be my partners in this and to help me. So what's going to happen potentially next? I need parents to make a commitment to me. And what I mean by that is next week, we will make available a survey for you to fill out. If you can't do it electronically, we're going to ask you to call us and we'll provide you a paper copy. And what we're going to ask you on that survey is if you plan to return your child to school and if you plan to use our transportation. Those will be the most pressing questions. There may be one or two others on there. If you plan to return your child to school, I'm going to ask, or if you plan to keep them home and virtual, for children in grades 6 through 12, that will be a 10-week commitment. For our elementary students, K through 5, that will be a trimester commitment. So if you think, I don't know, I heard Susan tonight, I know she's trying, but I don't feel this is going to work, I'm going to keep my child home. I'm saying to you that I'm going to expect that they're home having virtual learning for 10 weeks if they're 6 through 12, or for the first trimester if they're an elementary student. So at the end of that 10 weeks, or at the end of that trimester, we will ask you if you're prepared to send your child back to us at that point, or if you plan to keep them virtual. As you can imagine, having students just in and out randomly will not work in terms of social distancing, having a space for students in their classroom that is 6 feet apart from all of their peers, planning so that we are certain who will be here when. So we're going to ask you again to partner with us and make that commitment of either 10 weeks at secondary or a trimester at elementary, that you would have your children home with you or here with us. And we'll be doing that through a survey, and then we will be trying furiously to contact anyone we haven't heard from. I had a parent ask me, well, what if I have a child who has a medical condition and I want to keep that child home, but my other children can come back to school? Is it all or nothing? No, that totally works for you as a family. So if you have a child that you're feeling this one needs to be at home, that's your choice as a parent. But if you have another child, perhaps you want to keep your elementary child home, but you want to send your secondary child for the in-person instruction, or vice versa. You will have that opportunity as a parent to let us know what you would prefer for each of your children. By staff members, I would let you know, I know that Sarah and Jeff have been talking to you about this also, that I'm going to be asking you to make the same kind of commitment to let us know if you're coming back or not. We will do that through Martha Moran and Human Resources. And knowing what your plans are will help us plan in terms of children and schedule. We believe that there will be some opportunities for teachers who, for medical reasons, cannot be in the schools to teach remotely. But first I have to see how many of those folks there might be and how many children we might have whose parents opt for remote teaching. Do you have other questions, Bob?
Yeah. So some folks have asked about the idea that middle school and high school students are going to switch. They're going to walk around. They're going to be changing classes, even though it'll only be at a third of capacity, as you said. The question is, who's cleaning those desks in between these kids going into each class?
That is part of the detail that our advisory team is going to work on. And I'm saying they're moving. Again, perhaps we will figure out a way that teachers will move and children don't. That would be particularly hard at the high school. But yes, at some level, desks will have to be wiped down if, in fact, classrooms are used period after period. With the buildings at a third capacity, I don't know if there will be a way for us to use a classroom one period, not use it the next period, have it wiped down at that time, and then used again the following period. Part of that will depend on how many of our classrooms we actually need to use at any one time, given the number of students who are in. But the advisory team will be working on those cleaning protocols with Mr. Giaquinto and his folks.
Okay. There's several questions in here about kids who get speech, OT, PT, things like that. How do you envision those services continuing? Like speech, for example, I mean, the teacher needs to see a child's mouth to see how they're speaking. So how will that, how do you envision that all being handled?
We would suspect that the speech therapist will be wearing a face shield so that children can see their lips moving. And then that child may be able to sit far enough away, 6 feet, so that they could still see the speech therapist, but for speech, not be wearing their mask. We have ordered adult face shields, gowns, gloves, and masks, and we've ordered pediatric masks. I will speak to Mr. Handon and see if he is or has considered or has already ordered pediatric face shields if such a thing exists. But in terms of therapies, we would anticipate students will still get their therapies. Some of the hands-on therapies, so physical PT or OT, might have to be more spoken therapies than physical manipulation. So I'm not going to bend your arm, but I'm going to talk to you about how to bend your arm or how to grasp a pencil. But again, part of that will be determined by the students who return and then what it looks like we could do. So if I'm the speech therapist, I might be able to take a student to my classroom, to my speech room, sit socially distanced from them with my face shield on and conduct a regular speech therapy session. For students who have something like group speech, you could have a group for speech if they were sitting socially distanced. And oftentimes those groups are working on language and pragmatics. So we are anticipating that students will receive their full range of services.
Okay. Another question here is around hand sanitizer and cleansing wipes. Will children be given hand sanitizer by the school district? Will they be around the building? Like that.
I believe there will be hand sanitizer in every classroom, and we had already installed additional hand sanitizer dispensers throughout the district in all of our schools and our facilities. Students could bring their own hand sanitizer. I don't see a problem with that. Again, they can't share it with their friends or their teachers, as children will sometimes want to do. But if parents feel safer putting hand sanitizer in the backpack, they could do that. We won't be having elementary students use cubbies. They will keep their coats and their backpacks at their desk. They will not be sharing crayons, pencils, paper, or any other materials with other children. Again, as we start the year and we're pretty locked down, everybody will have to have their own supplies that only they touch.
Okay. Several people here are saying, so if I send my child to school and then it does not seem safe because precautions aren't being taken seriously, are you saying I can't switch them to virtual learning until the end of this trimester, or can they switch basically anytime they want?
They could most likely switch anytime they want, because that will be the easier move than deciding that you want them when they've been virtual to come back in.
Okay.
There might be a lag in how quickly we can get you into a virtual class. That would be the only holdup I would see.
Right. And then one person asked, would children be guaranteed their classroom teacher if it's virtual?
No, I can't
Or
guarantee.
we might do the BOCES option, right?
Well, even our option, because it will depend which teachers return to us. So
Right.
it could be that the teacher who has a medical reason for not returning to school isn't your child's teacher, might not even be the teacher who has taught that grade level typically. But if they are a certified teacher, certified to teach in elementary, they would be teaching the virtual children. The children who are attending virtually.
Okay. Is there a possibility that elementary kids from the same family could have different start times based on the staggered schedule? Will times be available before we have to decide if we need to use the bus or not?
So if the two schools that will be on the same time schedule will be the two village schools. And then Glendale and Glenwarden will be on the same time schedule. And I think we are closing in on the times. But I would say to parents, if when you're filling out the survey, you're not sure, I would say I need transportation, because I'd rather plan for you and have you not ride than not plan for you and then find out you need a ride. Does that make sense, Bob?
Yes.
The way I said it?
Yeah, the way you said it sounds fine. What's being done to work with the town and state to provide high-speed internet to children and families that live in rural areas for remote learning?
We're actually working with the region and with Senator Tonko for that. So we have certainly been making our case clear to the state education department, to the governor's office, working with Senator Tonko, who was doing, putting together a report to provide to his colleagues about needing that infrastructure and fast if we're going to continue doing this. So as a school, we're leveraging the associations we have, but I would encourage parents to reach out to our legislators and say, if this is going to continue, this is really an important need. Because frankly, I talk with these folks pretty regularly, and I'm not sure my voice always carries in the same way that a parent's would.
And did you say we were able to set up hotspots to some degree last spring?
Yes, we gave family hotspots to use to improve their receptivity. But I certainly know there are areas in our community that are high, not even slow speed consistently.
Okay. Will the school district consider bus monitors performing temperature checks prior to a child getting on the bus? Now, not all buses have monitors, though, right? But
correct.
They're getting at there. Can we be checking these kids before they even get on the bus? And again, it comes back to this: will parents work with us and take the kid's temperature or not?
Yes, and at this point, no. I will be quite honest. I can't see that I would be asking a bus aide to take kids' temperatures. I really need parents to work with us. I'm pleading with you.
Okay. Okay. That's probably good for me now, Susan.
All right. Well, unless there are other specific questions, I've covered the overarching parts of our plan, including that both teachers and parents will be pinged to complete a survey to let us know what their needs are as we come back to school. I want to encourage you, there's a space on our website where you can continue to submit questions, and we will periodically get answers to them if we can't answer them right off. I would encourage you to think about what we've talked about this evening, to look at the survey data, to read the other comments, to engage in a conversation with us about your concerns, your fears. I will say this, I'm a realist. And I know I can sit here this evening and say to you as parents and as staff members, oh, don't worry about it. But I know we're worried about it because I'm worried about it. And again, it is my prime responsibility as a leader of our school district to ensure, to the best of my ability, people's safety and our children's safety. And that's why I keep saying we have to work together. That's why we've invited you to join our advisory teams. But that's why I'm saying to you, the school district can't be the folks who are monitoring every individual's health. We have to take personal responsibility for that. We need you to help us be the best version of ourselves for your children. That's the thing I say to my staff all of the time. I want us to be the best versions of ourselves for our children. But I need your help to do that. This is truly going to be a community effort.
And Susan?
Yes, Bob.
One final question, only because it's been up here 3 times. It could be the same person putting it up here, but if students can't attend full-time in person, will the school be refunding school taxes so parents can choose a different option?
Not to my
I know the answer to this, but you should answer it.
No, I do not believe that is going to happen. I certainly know that's being talked about in many places throughout the state of New York,
Yeah.
but I don't have a mechanism to do that.
Okay.
Susan?
All right. Thank you.
Yes, Dave.
I just want folks that want to join one of the work groups have until this evening,
Yes.
right? It's online for those of you who want to join. It's not too late. I think we're going to close it down to this evening at some point or tomorrow morning. It will no longer be sign up. So I encourage you, if you're interested and you want to get some of your points that you've been making into that work groups, into those work groups, I'm sorry, I'd encourage you to join.
Thank you, Dave. And I just want to say that Mr. Handon just texted me to let me know that he did order masks for children for speech. So that's my team. They're always out there doing their best work.
So we know that we did not get to every single question tonight. There's, I believe, almost 500 people online, and I think everybody asked a question, and some people asked multiple. It's our intention that we are not going to let any of these questions slide by. That, you know, we will read them through. We'll probably, Susan, I would think, give them to the proper work group. Many of them we probably will answer in a question and answer, frequently asked questions piece. But I can assure you that the board won't let these just slip by. We wanted to read these and understand them. And I know the administration is going to use them in their decision process.
And Dave, I would also say certainly if anything, substantial changes between now and the start of school, we would be happy to host another town hall closer to the opening when perhaps we have even different guidance from the governor.
Yeah, I think that was the point I wanted just to add at the end here, Susan, was we use the words we, and our we is a we of an umbrella to which we can decide what we want to do. Most all of these rules have been passed down to us through guidance from the governor's office, the education department, or the board of regents. We cannot, in our right conscience as a board, allow us to go against the direction that the state is giving us. There's many reasons for it, not the least of which is we could never afford to run our schools without state aid. And we would not want to jeopardize that, but also because there's experts out there that are giving us these directions, and we have to believe in following them. And I think I would just echo, Susan, what you said, that this is not easy for anyone, but I know that for parents, we really, really need your help with this. And I think you didn't get, some people, I think, want a little bit more information about the virtual learning and what that's going to be like. And, we gave you as much information as we kind of had at this point. But please feel free to send questions to the school. There's a form online to do that. And if you really need that answer and you need to have a little bit more information, then contact the school through that form, and we'll try to get you the most information we possibly could. So Bob, is there any last parting comments, questions you wanted to put in? Or
No, I think we hit the general ones. Like you said, we're gonna pour through these and do something with them, Dave.
okay.
Because I was not able to get to a whole lot of folks. And some of them are repetitive, some of them Susan covered already. So, but I think I'm okay though.
Good. Yeah, I promise folks, we're not letting these just go by the wayside. Bob has captured all of the questions. We've recorded this session, so we're going to have all the questions on the document. And Superintendent Schwartz, I don't know if you wanted to say a few closing comments.
Thank you, I would. So it's interesting to sit in your office and be talking to the people you can't see and wondering what is their reaction, what are they thinking about what I'm saying. I'm a very visual learner, so I'm the kind of person who benefits from seeing people's faces and their body language. I always feel just a bit out of my element when I'm teleconferencing or meeting like this. So I also think that probably for some of you this evening, you might have thought, I'll use a nice word, wow, she's really bossy. She keeps saying, I've got to do this. Or maybe some of you thought, geez, she's not bossy enough. She should, tell people what they have to do. I don't think that's how we build a partnership. And I'll be starting my 15th year here as a school leader. I live in our community. There are children in my neighborhood who attend our schools. And I want to have the kind of relationship with all of you that I have with those folks in my neighborhood who talk to me about school, who ask me questions about what we're doing and what I'm thinking, who sometimes disagree with me. When I say we've got to do this as a community, we really do. We have to be partners in this planning and then in carrying this planning out for our children. They are your children at home, and I consider them my children here, and I want to do what's right by them. So in the chance that I have offended anyone this evening in some way, please know that was not my intent. My heart is in the right place. I care very deeply about your children, and I care very deeply about my staff. So don't simmer if I've said something that you didn't like this evening. Reach out and let us know so that we can work together to resolve whatever the question might be. I welcome that kind of exchange. Thank you. And thank you to Dave for introducing the evening. Bob, thank you for moderating. And Karen, thank you for putting my content up for me. I appreciate all of you.
And I would love the next time we have an in-person board meeting, even if we get 1/10 of the people who came online today. It'd be wonderful to have you at our board meetings. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Karen. Thank you to the board, and thank you mostly to all of you for participating, sending us your comments, and being willing to be patient and understanding as we move forward with what we hope to be the very best possible education for our children in the community. Good night, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you and good night.